Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video, which is going to be the mid-year freakout tag. This is my second year filming this tag video. It's my second year making book videos on YouTube, and I really love this tag. I feel like it's such a great way to just kind of check in at the middle of the year, reflect on everything that I've read so far, and then kind of reassess my reading goals for the last half of the year. I've read about 40 books so far this year, which this time last year I had read about 50. But I've talked on my channel before about how one of my reading goals for 2023 is to focus more on quality over quantity, and I feel like it's really paid off because I've been a lot more intentional with picking up books that I think I'm actually going to enjoy instead of being like, I have to read this many books to hit a certain number goal. And I found a lot of books that I've loved this year, I think even more than I had at this point last year. So with that being said, I'm going to put all the questions for the tag in the description box. I think it would be so fun if everyone left their answers to the tag in the comments below. And let's just go ahead and get straight into it. The first question is best book you've read so far in 2023. This question was a lot harder to answer this year than it was last year. I remember last year I had read my favorite book of the year in January, and I feel like it kind of put every book I read after that at an unfair disadvantage because I was just comparing every single book to that book. So there was really no competition. But this year I'm glad there were like a few books I could have put for this answer, but I have decided on one that I do think deserves the title of best book I've read so far, and that is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is Johnny and Shannon's love story, and they both come from very different worlds, different backgrounds, but they end up going to the same school, and that is where they meet, and that is where their love story begins. And just the way they connect, the way their relationship develops and builds, and the love they have for one another is so pure, and I absolutely loved reading about it. They both are struggling with very different things in their personal lives, but when they come together, it's like their little safe haven. They're almost in this like impenetrable bubble that no one else can touch them when they're together because they just love and care for one another so deeply, and they just protect one another, and it's so sweet to read about. I loved Johnny and Shannon in this book equally as much as I loved all of the side characters. This is the start to the Boys of Tommen series, so all the characters are going to get their own books, which I'm so happy about because the found family aspect in this is just one of my favorite parts of it. The way this book is written, you really feel everything so deeply for the characters along with them, and you are taking on their struggles as if it was your own. These books are very, very heavy, so search up content warnings if you are considering picking these books up. I could not recommend this series enough. I definitely think this is the best book that I've read so far this year. The next question is best sequel you've read so far in 2023, and that would have to be Heartless by Elsie Silver. I've not talked about this book yet on my channel because I just finished reading it a few weeks ago. I am currently filming a reading vlog for the entire Chestnut Springs series that will be up on my channel shortly. I'm currently in the middle of book 4, which is the last book that's out right now, so as soon as I finish that, I'll edit that vlog and it'll be up if you want to hear more of my thoughts on all of the books. But I went into the series pretty open-minded. I heard so many good things about it. These are cowboy romances, which on paper would not traditionally be my type of thing, but the way people described it, it just sounded like such a fun time. So I decided to give it a chance, and I enjoyed the first book, Flawless, but I wasn't blown away by it. But I also knew that books 2 and 3 in the series were kind of the fan favorites, so I wanted to continue on. I was curious to know which book was going to be my favorite. And after reading up to book 4, I definitely think Heartless book 2 stands out to me the most. And I think that's definitely because of the characters, because just looking at the tropes, we have single dad nanny romance, there's a child in this book since he's a single dad, grumpy sunshine. They're all tropes that I don't normally go for, but I still love this book so much despite it having tropes that aren't traditionally my favorites. Willow was just such a fun character. She was definitely the sunshiny character, and sometimes the sunshiny character can be written to the point of being like annoying because they're just so overly like perky and happy all the time. But Willow was positive and like bubbly and fun without crossing that line of being annoying. And then on the other end, Cade is our grumpy man, but he was never irritating, and I feel like he was just broody and mysterious enough to still be so enjoyable and want to root for them to get together. I love the characters, I love the storyline, the spice was so good in this book. I'm just like obsessed with this series, but Heartless book 2 in this series definitely stands out to me. The next question is new release you haven't read read yet but want to. And that for me is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I talked about this in my summer TBR video, but each one of Emily Henry's books I have taken on a different vacation. And so now I associate that vacation with that Emily Henry book, and it makes all of her books extra special for me. I feel like her books are very perfect to take on a summer vacation. I went on a trip a few weeks ago with every intention of reading and finishing this book on that trip, but unfortunately that did not happen. The trip was so much fun, but it was definitely not a relaxing kind of vacation with a lot of downtime. It was very much, we have an itinerary, we have things to do, places to see, people to meet, and not a lot of reading got done. But I'm definitely planning to pick this one up soon. It's probably going to be one that I read at the pool or maybe at the beach if I end up going soon. So this will definitely get read at some point this summer. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I actually have 3 books for this question, and they all come out in October. The first book is Caught Up by Liz Tomford. This is the 3rd book in her Windy City series that I have been absolutely loving. Caught Up follows Kai. We were introduced to him in The Right Move, book 2. He is an MLB player. He's a single dad. So this is going to be a baseball romance, which I've never read before. I'm really curious to see how that's going to go. It's also going to be single dad nanny romance, and obviously there will be Kai's child in it, which again, normally things I don't like, but after how much I loved Heartless with those tropes and how much I've loved the rest of the Windy City series, I'm not worried about disliking this book for the tropes at all. I think it's going to be so good, and I cannot wait for more in this series and more from Liz Tomford. The next new release I cannot wait for is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the sequel to Icebreaker, and this book follows Russ, who is one of the hockey players from book 1. And I'm really excited for his story because based on what we got from him in Icebreaker, he just seems really mysterious, so I want to know more about his backstory. And this is one that I wish came out sooner. I wish it was coming out in the summer because it takes place at a summer camp. I know that Russ ends up having a one-night stand with a girl named Aurora, and then they end up being camp counselors together at this summer camp. So the setting sounds super fun and summery. I wish, like I said, I was going to be able to read this at the pool this summer, but I still cannot wait for this to be released in October. And the last release I cannot wait for is the 5th book in the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver. This is Hopeless. This is going to be Beau's story. I don't know much more than that. I don't know who the female love interest is going to be. I don't know what the tropes are going to be. But I am just obsessed and loving this series so much, so I can't wait for book 5. But I also am so not ready for this series to end. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the final book in the series, and I just don't want it to be over because I've enjoyed reading it so much. The next question is biggest surprise, and I took that to mean a pleasant surprise. So for this prompt, I'm going to say The No-Show by Beth O'Leary was such a pleasant surprise. I read this the week of Valentine's Day for a romance reading vlog that I was filming. I picked it up and read it for the vlog solely because it fit the little theme I was going with of reading books that take place on or around Valentine's Day. All I knew going into this is that one man stands up 3 women on Valentine's Day. And I think that's all anyone should know going into it. But I really didn't have too many expectations. I'd heard some reviews, but they were pretty mixed. So I'd never read from Beth O'Leary before, wasn't sure how I was going to feel. By about the 40% mark in this, I found this book to be pretty slow, a little boring, but I knew there was some kind of crazy ending to it, so I was excited to keep reading and see what was going to happen. And by the 50% mark, this story just really picked up for me, and it's like every page just got better and better, and I was getting so sucked in, could not put it down. The plot twist absolutely blew me away. I couldn't believe that I didn't predict it myself. I thought the ending was so well done. I loved how everything wrapped up in here. And this book was almost a 5-star. The slow start was really the only thing keeping me from giving it the full 5-star rating, but I could not have been more pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book and how much it impressed me. And that kind of leads me into my answer for the next question, which is favorite new author, either a debut author or an author that's new to you. So I'm gonna have to say Beth O'Leary. After loving The No-Show, I had to pick up her most popular book, which is The Flat Share. I feel like The Flat Share is kind of an OG book talk book, so I definitely wanted to read it at some point, but reading The No-Show and being so impressed by Beth O'Leary's writing and the plot, it made me really prioritize picking up more from her. And I really love the way Beth O'Leary crafts a story. I feel like the premises to her plots are so unique. It's not your traditional romance where it's like a meet cute, they fall in love, there's a conflict, it gets resolved, happy ending. There's always something interesting to the storyline in her books. And I really like how she throws in subplots that give more depth and layers to the story without taking away from the romance. Her writing feels so classic, cozy, British rom-com. It's very uplifting while also being heartfelt and having emotional depth to it. And I'm definitely planning on working my way through her entire backlist because the premises to all of her stories are so unique. The next question is newest fictional crush, and I had to repeat a book for this prompt because absolutely no one has topped Cade Eaton, Daddy Cade from Heartless by Elsie Silver. The whole time I was reading this book, I was just thinking how hot he was. Like, the things he said, the way he cared for his son. He was mysterious, but you understood why he was closed off once you got his backstory, and the way he opened up to Willa. He was still like great at communicating. I love how he was grumpy at first, and then you really warmed up to him as a character. There hasn't really been a book boyfriend that I've read about since him that has come close. I mean, all the Chestnut Springs men are top tier book boyfriends, but not really anyone else can touch them. So we love Cade Eaton. The next question is a book that made you cry. That is definitely When True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the story of Emma, who marries her soulmate, the love of her life, but he one day goes down in a helicopter crash and is presumed dead. So she grieves the loss of her husband, but a few years later she's able to move forward and she meets someone new. She opens her heart to love again and they get engaged. But while she's engaged to this new man, she gets a call from her dead husband that he's not actually dead. He's coming home to her. So now she has to decide which man she's going to choose. Not only was it so heart-wrenching to put yourself in the main character's shoes and try and decide along with her which man she should pick, but for me, the thing that broke me in this book is when she's grieving the loss of her husband. And I feel like it's such a testament to how wonderful of an author Taylor Jenkins Reid is. When you're reading this, you know as the reader that her husband is not actually dead, but you are grieving him along with Emma Blair as if he actually was dead. And it is just, oh my god, it is so heartbreaking. I don't want to give anything away, but like, just the things that happened. I was sobbing. I was bawling my eyes out. I had to put the book down to grab tissues and take a moment and pull myself together. And there's been a few other books this year that have made me tear up, but absolutely no book has made me feel the way this book did. I was just crying my eyes out, but the pain was worth it because I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars and I highly recommend if you can handle the pain. On the flip side of that, we have a book that made you happy. That for me has got to be The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I just had the best time reading this and I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. It's not a literary masterpiece. It's not perfect. In some ways it's trashy, it's cringy, but the way Hannah and Garrett's characters develop, the way they bring out the best in one another, the found family of this book, it just made me so happy. And there are heavy topics discussed in this, but I felt like it was handled with such care to where it's not like a melancholy kind of book. It really is an uplifting, positive story of them working through really difficult things in the most beautiful way. And this book was just such a fun time to me, and this book really started it all for me, not only in terms of becoming obsessed with hockey romances, but becoming obsessed with hockey in general. I actually started watching NHL regularly. It started a whole new era for me, and it makes me so happy. Hockey makes me so happy now, and I have this book to thank for it. The next question is most beautiful book that you bought this year, and I took that to mean beautiful in terms of the aesthetics of the book and the cover, the way it looks on the outside. And that for me is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. This is another book I've not talked about yet on my channel. I just bought it earlier this month and I actually just finished reading it last night. I bought this because I went to Paris earlier in the month, so I was trying to find books that took place in Paris and would get me even more excited for my trip. This is one that I heard a lot about when I was looking for books that took place in Paris, so I decided to pick this one up, and I'm so glad that I found this edition. I'm pretty sure this is like the 10th anniversary collector's edition, but it is just so pretty. It almost looks like a classic, the way you open it up, and it has this really pretty inside cover, and it comes with its own little bookmark. I love the gold foiling on the cover. The edges of the pages are all painted. This book is so pretty, and I love this edition. And the last question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I have so many books, literally hundreds of books on my TBR. When I go back and look at my 23 books I want to read in 2023 list, I don't even think I've made a dent in that list because new books just keep popping up for me all the time that I want to pick up. But there are a few that I absolutely, positively have to read. Like, I refuse to go into 2024 without having read these books. The first is the Magnolia Park series. Jessa Hastings just announced a few days ago her new covers for these books, which I, along with many others, I'm not a fan of. I just love her original covers. I think they're so beautifully designed. They're so ornate and intricate, and I'm just obsessed with them. So as soon as she announced the new covers, I immediately ran to buy the original covers off Amazon. I know Blackwell sells them too. I was able to get books 2 and 3. Still on the hunt for book 4, but my one concern is I know the sizing of the books is a little different if you buy the US or the UK edition. I'm not even sure which edition this is because I think I got it from Book Depository, which would mean it's probably the UK version, but then the ones I bought on Amazon, I don't know if they're the UK or the US edition. I'm just hoping and praying when they get here that they're going to be the same size, and then I can work on acquiring book 4. But yeah, aside from the cover story, I definitely want to read these books before the year ends because they sound like they're going to be right up my alley. It's like Gossip Girl set in London. That sounds like something I would so enjoy, and I hear so many good things about these books and the writing and the story. I know it's a very toxic type of relationship, but I think it's going to be one that's so entertaining and that will become a new favorite once I read this series. I also have to read the ACOTAR series, at least start it before 2023 ends. And I'm waiting because I feel like fantasy season for me is like fall, winter time. I don't really care to read fantasy in the summer. So I'm kind of holding out, waiting till it gets a little colder, waiting till the later seasons in the year, but I'll be damned if I don't read this book before the year ends. I also really want to read from Abby Jimenez before the year is over. I've heard so many good things about this one last year. I know the sequel to this, Yours Truly, just came out recently, and people have been loving that one as well. She's just an author that I've heard a lot about. People seem to love her and her writing, so I just want to have an opinion one way or the other and give her books a try for myself. So that, you guys, is going to conclude the mid-year freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Hit the red subscribe button to stick around to my channel if you're not subscribed already. Like I mentioned, I'll leave all the questions to this tag in the description box if you want to comment below with your answers to the tag. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you so soon in my next video. Bye, guys.